Ever heard of a ghost story so chilling it makes you double-check your locks at night? Well, get ready, because today we're re-diving into one of England's most terrifying and enduring legends, the tale of the Croglin Grange Vampire. This isn't just some campfire story. It's a saga filled with suspense, horror, and a desperate hunt for a creature that defies explanation. Our story begins in the picturesque county of Cumberland, now part of modern-day Cumbria in the north of England. The setting is a remote, single-story house known as Croglin Grange. In the early 1800s, this isolated home was rented by two brothers and their sister, who we'll call Amelia for the sake of our story. They were looking for a peaceful country retreat, a quiet escape from the hustle and bustle of city life. What they found instead was a nightmare that would haunt their family for generations. The first few months at the Grange were idyllic. They enjoyed the rolling hills, the fresh country air, and the quiet solitude of their new home. But as the seasons changed and the days grew shorter, a sense of unease began to creep in. It started subtly, a feeling of being watched, a shadow flickering at the edge of vision. But it was during one oppressively hot summer night that their peaceful existence was shattered forever. Amelia, unable to sleep due to the stifling heat, lay in her bed with the window shutters slightly ajar to let in a breeze. As she gazed out at the moonlit churchyard that bordered their property, she noticed two small points of light moving among the tombstones. At first, she dismissed them as fireflies or some trick of the moonlight, but the lights grew closer, moving with an unnatural speed and purpose, heading directly for the Grange. Her curiosity turned to dread as the lights reached the stone wall separating the churchyard from their garden. I scaled the wall with an eerie agility and darted across the lawn toward her window. A cold knot of fear tightened in her stomach. Amelia tried to scream, but her voice was caught in her throat. She was paralyzed, watching as the lights resolved into a pair of glowing, malevolent eyes. Then she heard a sound that would echo in her nightmares for the rest of her life. A faint, persistent scratching at her window pane. It was the sound of long, bony fingers methodically picking at the lead framework of the glass. Scratch, scratch, scratch. The sound was maddening, relentless. Amelia finally found her voice and let out a blood-curdling scream, hoping to wake her brothers who slept in a nearby room. But it was too late. The creature had managed to remove a pane of glass. A long, skeletal hand reached through the opening, fumbled with the window latch, and pushed the window open. A grotesque figure climbed into her room. It was tall and gaunt, with dark, shriveled skin and eyes that burned with a hellish light. It moved with a silent, predatory grace, its long claws clicking softly on the wooden floor. Before Amelia could scream again, the creature was upon her. It lunged at her, its cold hand clamping over her mouth, while its sharp teeth sank into her neck. She felt a searing pain, followed by a dizzying weakness as she felt her life force being drained away. The world began to spin, and darkness threatened to consume her. Just as she was about to lose consciousness, her brothers burst into the room. They had been woken by her initial scream and came running, armed with whatever they could grab. The sight that greeted them was horrifying. The creature, startled by their sudden appearance, hissed like a cornered animal. It released Amelia, who slumped to the floor and scrambled back toward the open window. One of the brothers managed to grab a fireplace poker and lunged at the retreating figure, but the creature was too fast. It leaped out the window and fled back across the lawn, disappearing into the darkness of the churchyard from which it came. The brothers rushed to their sister's side. She was pale and weak, with 2 distinct puncture wounds on her neck, still oozing blood. They managed to stop the bleeding and tend to her, but the physical and psychological trauma was immense. They knew they couldn't stay at Croglin Grange. The very next day, they packed their belongings and left, seeking refuge and recovery in a safer location. For months, they tried to put the horrific event behind them. Amelia slowly regained her physical strength, but the memory of those glowing eyes and the feeling of its teeth on her skin never left her. As time passed, she began to feel foolish, wondering if the isolation and the strange new environment had caused her to imagine the whole thing. Perhaps it was just a vivid nightmare, a figment of an overactive imagination. Convinced that they had overreacted, and with Amelia's reluctant agreement, the siblings decided to return to Croglin Grange the following spring. They armed themselves, determined not to be caught off guard again. They hoped that by confronting their fears, they could finally put the past to rest. For a while, it seemed to work. Life at the Grange returned to a semblance of normality. The nights were quiet, and there were no more strange lights or scratching sounds. They began to believe the monster was gone for good, but they were wrong. One evening, as winter approached, Amelia was sitting in her room when she heard it again. That same horrifying, scratching sound at her window. Her blood ran cold. She looked up and saw it the same pair of glowing eyes, the same gaunt face staring in at her. This time, however, she was prepared. She let out a piercing scream, not of fear, but of alarm. Her brothers, who were waiting and ready for this exact moment, burst from their rooms, pistols in hand. They saw the creature trying to force the window open, just as it had before. One of the brothers took aim and fired. The shot rang out, and the creature shrieked in pain. It clutched its leg, then turned and fled, limping heavily as it scrambled across the lawn and back toward the old churchyard. The brothers knew they couldn't let it escape this time. They rallied some of the local townsfolk, forming a small hunting party. Armed with guns, pitchforks, and lanterns, they followed the trail of blood left by the wounded creature. The trail led them directly to the stone wall of the churchyard and into the graveyard itself. It wound through the ancient tombstones, finally ending at the heavy stone door of a long-abandoned family vault. The door to the vault was slightly ajar. Prying it open, the men descended into the damp, musty darkness below. The air was thick with the smell of decay. Inside, they found several coffins, all in various states of disrepair. But one thing stood out immediately. One of the coffins had been broken open from the inside. Its lid was splintered, and the contents were scattered across the stone floor. And there, lying amongst the disturbed remains of other coffins, was a freshly desecrated casket. With trembling hands, they lifted the lid. Inside lay a shriveled, mummified corpse. It matched the description of the creature Amelia had seen perfectly: the gaunt frame, the dark, leathery skin, and the long, claw-like fingernails. And there, fresh and undeniable, was a recent gunshot wound in its leg. They had found their monster. Not knowing what else to do, and driven by a primal need to end the terror, the men did the only thing they could think of. They dragged the coffin and the hideous corpse out of the vault and into the daylight. There, in the middle of the churchyard, they built a massive pyre. They placed the body upon it and set it ablaze. The townsfolk watched in grim silence as the flames consumed the creature, turning it to ash and smoke, hoping to purge its evil from their land forever. After that day, the strange occurrences at Croglin Grange ceased. No more glowing eyes, no more scratching at the window. Peace finally returned to the small Cumberland community. The siblings eventually left the Grange, never to return. But the story of what they endured was passed down through their family, a chilling reminder of the night the vampire came to visit. The story of the Croglin Grange Vampire was first published in the 1890s by author Augustus Hare in his book, The Story of My Life. He claimed the story was told to him by a man named Captain Fisher, whose family had owned the Grange. Over the years, skeptics have tried to debunk the tale, suggesting it was an escaped lunatic, a large primate, or simply an elaborate hoax. Yet, no one has ever been able to definitively explain the events that transpired. The legend of Croglin Grange remains one of the most compelling and terrifying vampire accounts in British history. So, what do you think? Was it a real-life vampire, a misunderstood creature, or a masterfully told ghost story that has stood the test of time? Whatever the truth may be, it serves as a chilling warning. The next time you feel a draft on a hot summer night, or hear a strange scratching at your window, you might want to make sure your locks are secure. You never know what might be lurking in the darkness outside. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey into the shadows. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of the strange and unexplained. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.